a regular meeting. It just means that it wasn't on our originally passed calendar of events at the beginning of the year. And so from time to time, we do add or remove meetings based on need for decisions. In this case, we always had a workshop planned for this time slot for transportation. And if you stay through the special meeting, we're going to go right into the workshop after that time to talk about broader high-level transportation issues in the community after that. But it became clear as we were preparing for that meeting that what staff were looking for was a couple of clear decisions on a couple of items from that. And we don't normally use the workshop format to address that. Workshops are typically where we're asking questions back and forth, getting informed and getting ready to make a decision, but we don't normally make decisions in a workshop. And so the decision was made that because of the timeliness of the matter, we needed to make decisions on these two particular issues. And so we broke them out to a special meeting of council, which is what we're here to consider today. And so the last comment I'll make before we get underway is that there seems to be a lot of communications back and forth over the last couple of days about what we're actually going to be talking about it. And so the second item in particular is one that's got a lot of interest, which is the question about Mountain Highway and potentially road reallocation or some other reformatting of the road. Just wanted to be clear that we're talking about the section of Mountain Highway from 18th up to 27th. There was quite a bit of information out there that we were talking about the highway interchange or the portion that was just paved this last year. Mountain Highway was only paved up to 18th, and the timeliness question about why the staff would like direction on this item tonight is because they intend to pave the next section up from there this next year. And so they wanted a decision made about layout before we get to that point. So that's how we've gotten to this point so far. I just figured I'd start with that. But council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone please move its adoption? Moved by Councillor Ma, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Council, as a part of this package, actually, sorry, it's the next one that we have meeting minutes for. That'll be on the workshop itself. Okay, so the agenda has been circulated, which means we are prepared to move into the reports. The first item is grant funding application, Spirit Trail Eastern section, Seymour to Windridge. Oh, that's right. So as one of the things that we did decide to do, a special meeting of council doesn't always have all the regular trappings of a council meeting. Sometimes we just meet to consider a particular item. But because there was so much interest in speaking to the item, quite a number of people reached out to us, we did decide to add a 30-minute period at the front end of the meeting for people to be able to raise issues of interest to them related to the two items being discussed. And to that end, we have a speakers list that's been created by people communicating to the clerk's office ahead of time. It does already have a full slate of speakers on it, entirely on item 2.2. And so we're going to start into that right away before we even get into the meat of the evening. So the first speaker that I have signed up to speak is Andrew Marks. And Andrew Marks is joining us here in the council chamber. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you'll have 3 minutes to address the council. Oh, that's new. There we go.
Mayor Little and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Andrew Marks, and I reside on Arborlynn Crescent in Lynn Valley. I'm here to speak on the Mountain Highway Safety Improvements Central Segment proposal. Our family is located just north of Kirkstone 20th Street intersection at Mountain Highway. We drive, walk, and cycle the Mountain Highway corridor daily. We have a daughter in Eastview Elementary and another who will be attending in a few years. First, let me say the staff proposal to reconfigure the vehicle lanes to single lanes in each direction and include buffered bike lanes is a welcome one. Put simply, the cars come too close for comfort for us. Secondly, as a cyclist who grits his teeth while biking down Mountain Highway every week for work, I look forward to a more visible right-of-way. It should be noted that the staff proposal does not address the sidewalk condition along Mountain Highway due to funding limitations, which is disappointing. The majority of sidewalks are undersized, deteriorating, and provide minimal protection. Last month, a group of us met with Councillor Back to walk the central segment and note our concerns. These concerns were also summarized in a letter to council on November 30th, 2023, which was signed by residents of our neighborhood. One part of the letter I'm highlighting today is the intersection of Kirkstone Road and Mountain Highway. Every morning and afternoon, this intersection is used by families with small children getting to and from Eastview Elementary. It also has a key bus stop for commuters heading to Phibbs Exchange and downtown Vancouver. However, the west side of this intersection has poor visibility for both pedestrians and cyclists, which is a bad combination with drivers who are rushing up and down Mountain Highway or through the Kirkstone connector. The staff report notes that this corridor has the second most pedestrian and cyclist involved collisions in the district. And in the last 3 weeks alone, there have been five incidents along this pedestrian way that we are aware of. And of course, many more near misses happen regularly. We also have a neighbor who works at Lionsgate Hospital as an emergency nurse who has been seen firsthand the aftermath of accidents at this very intersection. Our 2023 letter made several recommendations, including relocating a large BC hydro pole to improve visibility, curb extensions similar to the one proposed for East 18th Street, having a pedestrian advanced walk signal, funding a school crossing guard program, adding more pedestrian markings, and several others. I'm calling on council to support the current proposal, but also to consider these additional safety measures in the district's plan for the central segment. We don't want to wait for a tragedy to occur before action is taken. Simple but vital upgrades can be made now to prevent accidents and improve road safety for our community. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments and remarks. The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert joining us virtually. Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? You are marked as muted in the system. Hazen Colbert, you're still marked as muted in the system. Okay, we're obviously having some IT issues. I can see that Mr. Colbert has moved over as a panelist. There we go. Oh, it unmuted for a moment. It's still muted. Okay, we're going to have to come back to Mr. Colbert. So we'll continue on with the list, and I will check back in with Mr. Colbert to get his comments. The next speaker I have is Eric Hung, joining us here in the council chamber. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Mayor Little and councillors, my name is Eric Hung and currently live on 1271 Arborlynn Crescent in Lynn Valley, and I'm a lifelong district resident growing up in the Windsor Park area and now also work in the district. I'm here to speak about the Mountain Highway safety improvements, specifically the central segment proposal. We live in this segment, and our daughters 11 and 8 attend Eastview Elementary. We specifically moved to this area 5 years ago because of the walkability. We frequently walk to Lynn Valley Mall, Crookstone Park, Karen Magnuson Rec Center, and some of the other parks in the area. This means we're walking, cycling, or scootering this corridor several times a day, and probably hundreds of times a year. I'm very supportive of the proposal to make Mountain Highway single lanes in both directions. This will reduce the urge and the ability for drivers to speed and provide room for a buffer to keep pedestrians safe. If this buffer is large enough for bike lanes, this is an added bonus. As an avid cyclist, both road and mountain, I ride Mountain Highway out and back from every ride, and it's usually the most dangerous part of my ride. There's tremendous bidirectional pedestrian flow along this corridor for families walking to Eastview Elementary, Ross Road Elementary, and the Lynn Valley Mall. This means navigating a very narrow section due to hedges and deteriorating sidewalks along the way. The sidewalk surface is almost unrollable on a scooter and represents a severe tripping hazard for pedestrians, especially seniors. This is a liability and needs to be addressed. In terms of safety, the intersection at Kirkstone and Mountain Highway should be the highest priority of this project. Although turning Mountain Highway into single lanes in each direction and adding left turn bays will help, many of us feel that that use this intersection daily believe more needs to be done. Over the last 5 years, our family has experienced many near misses walking across this intersection, and it gives us tremendous anxiety to let our kids cross on their own. We have a community thread, and unfortunately, car crash updates are almost a weekly affair. This is backed up by the report that states this is the second most dangerous intersection in the district for collisions. Our recommendations are relocating the large hydro pole on the northwest corner to improve visibility, having a pedestrian advanced walk signal, adding a pedestrian island similar to the proposal for the East 18th Street intersection, and better markings. It is our desire that these recommendations be considered in the district's plan for this central segment. Every week we don't take action, we are increasing our probability for another tragedy to occur. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Eric Hung. Next speaker I have is Cheryl Atchison. Joining us here in the council chamber. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Cheryl Atchison. I live in the 800 block of Roche Point Drive by Parkgate. However, my children go to school in Lynn Valley, so I am on the Mountain Highway or Arborlynn roads at least 7 times a week. I oppose the order that's been put forth, and I have actually started a petition, and it was not so much to be against improvements to Mountain Highway. I believe improvements do need to happen, but also to bring the attention to the residents. Currently, there are just under 1,200 signatures in less than 48 hours over this particular change or option that's been presented. I believe that Mountain Highway is obviously a very busy roadway, and I do agree that safety is important for particularly the area that you're discussing. However, I would like to also suggest changes be made to Mountain Highway for the lower area where the traffic is gridlock and will just back up Mountain Highway as it does all the time, and with a single lane all the way up to Lynn Valley, that will continue to increase that traffic. Drivers are aggressive. Drivers are in a hurry. They're taking side streets to cut around, which also then causes more possible residential area accidents with speeders and people not being careful while they're driving. Ontario currently is backing away from bike lanes on the main roadways, and I do believe that they're onto something. After watching the bike lane situation on the Mount Seymour Parkway and the issues that it's created, and I look forward to seeing what that looks like when there's snow. I'm not so sure that Mountain Highway is the best place for this to be happening. I have very avid cyclist friends. I personally am not one. They have actually come forward and asked me to please present that they prefer the residential and Arborlynn options, that the Mountain Highway for a bike lane is too dangerous in general for them. I appreciate your time and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I will say that the lower section below 18th will be considered by the council in the springtime. So it's the next project along. Next speaker I have is Joshua Peters, joining us here in the council chamber. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mayor and Council, on the Mountain Highway Road proposal before us. My name is Joshua Peters. I'm a resident of the district for the past 10 years. Our family lives in the Lynn Valley Center area. I'm a new dad, and I take the Mountain Highway route about 10 times a week for commuting, and I'm an avid cyclist. I'm speaking for the first time at council because I care deeply about the impact that this will have on people that use mobility, bus vehicles, and cyclists. I'm strongly against the staff proposal as presented. I'd ask that council consider the close to 1,200 signatures as of tonight on the online petition that calls for the realignment of the Mountain Highway to include 2 lanes southbound. This is the chance to do the right thing, and I call on you to consider that. I want to speak to 3 points quickly. One on future-proofing our communities, 2, using the bike corridors we already have in place, and 3, funding road safety measures that actually matter. On future-proofing, we have higher density coming to the district as part of the province's housing plan, over 5,000 new homes. Restricting this mobility, how will this accommodate this future growth? It'll just create more traffic now at the moment, and this is even before the Mosaic property comes online on Mountain Highway, adding hundreds of more cyclists, vehicles, and bus users. On the second point, current bike corridors. We have a lovely new project through Kirkstone Park, bike highway, that'll be part of an overpass, a few $1 million. Why not finish that and use that as the main route? We know from other cyclists that Arborlynn and Viewlyn are regularly used, and even if this $1 million route was built, cyclists would use other routes anyways. On the third point, and just to add on that, I noticed 8 people that requested the bike lanes in the mountain on the engagement survey for the mountain highway. Noted they wanted the bike lanes, the remainder didn't. So is this a small minority asking for the $1 million over the majority that have to commute? Third, on road safety programs, ask for spending for better road line marking, cat eyes, street sweeping, drain cleaning, improvements that will make it easier for commuters that rely on this road to get to work. Please listen to your constituents, do the right common sense thing, and vote this staff motion down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments, Joshua Peters. Can you just check in? I'm hearing a little bit of feedback in the system. If anybody is live streaming or they're playing the web-based version of it and they have their volume on, that may be the source that's causing the loop or feedback. So if you could just all turn your volumes down on your devices if anyone is playing it. Next, I'm going to go to, oh, yes, Councillor Pope. It's booming a bit. Okay. Okay, we'll also adjust that with the volume on our side as well. But the next speaker I have is joining us virtually. I'm going back to the top of the list here. This is Hazen Colbert. Hazen Colbert, you're marked as muted in the system. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Mayor Little, and I can hear you, and I am marked as unmuted in my system.
I can now hear you clearly. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
I am firmly against this particular proposal to limit what is an arterial road to nothing more than an access point behind an alley. To take Mountain Highway, which is a critical access point to Lynn Valley, and turn it into nothing more than a right-of-way is it's a kick in the stomach to the residents of Lynn Valley who have been treated with outright disdain and malice over the last 10 years with respect to redevelopment, with not one additional meter of road being added to our transportation and infrastructure, such that there are times where it can take 15 to 20 minutes to drive the same distance that 15 years ago took 3 minutes. The staff report itself is incredibly flawed, and I have to question how these things could have happened. For instance, for those of you around in 2018, particularly in June of 2018, when the Emery Village public hearing took place, you will remember that Moti sent 2 letters into the DNV questioning whether or not Emery Village should go ahead because of the limited capacity on Mountain Highway. That's what they said before Emery Village was built. That's what they said before this particular project is in place. How could those letters now be somehow ignored? In addition, I find the claim that the length of the road is the second most accident prone to be absolutely outright false. And I say that because the North Shore News actually ran an article in which they actually listed the 6 top areas for accidents on the North Shore, and this area is not in the top 6. So I went into the ICBC statistics myself. This is not an area that is remotely accident prone. The other problem has to do with the pockets that are being suggested, in which the pockets are large enough for 1 car to wait to make a left-hand turn. Now, I came up Mountain Highway northbound on Saturday afternoon. Heavy traffic, southbound, so heavy, in fact, that Mountain Highway was backed up to Lynn to East 27. Now, if we were going to limit this road to one lane on each side, we're now talking about it backing up past Lynn Valley Road, past Lynn Valley Elementary School. Now, while I was going northbound, I reached Kirkstone, and there's a TransLink bus immediately beside me, and there are 4 cars waiting to turn left. Well, I had to stop, and I could not pass on the right-hand side because the TransLink bus was there. Now, what are we going to do when we're down to one lane going northbound, and we've got 4 cars turning on Kirkstone and a TransLink bus there? It's going to take 15 to 20 seconds for that one lane to back up all the way down to Arborlynn. This is an egregious failure in terms of technical analysis and transportation planning. This should never have even come to council, let alone be presented to the public. And I truly hope, I know you're going to tell me I'm nearly done. Just wait, hold on, hold your horses. I don't need any help. I've been doing this all my life. It's time to put a stop to these harebrained agendas. Please put a stop to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments this evening. Okay, the next speaker I have is Janet Hills, joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jan Hills, 1647 Alborlynn Drive, Northbound. I have 2 words to say about this project. Don't do it. Mountain Highway is a major arterial road in and out of Lynn Valley. There are only 2 major ways in and out of Lynn Valley, Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley Road. We are adding more and more condos and apartments in the area, thus more people who need to be able to get to and from work, to school, recreation, etc. Reducing the northbound Mountain Highway to 1 lane to create a bike lane will make traffic worse. According to the Mountain Highway Transportation Assessment Report from March 2023, the majority of bicycle trips are in the summer or on weekends. So therefore, for 6 months of the year, we're going to have these bicycle lanes creating havoc with our traffic, and we're not gaining anything anywhere. I would also like to say that Toronto is removing their bike lanes due to adverse congestion. Regarding Eastview School, my 2 children went to Eastview School. There is a controlled light for crossing Mountain Highway, which works very effectively. There was also suggestions about putting a bike lane down 18th Street to Alborlynn, to Appin, to Arborlynn. Has anybody from the council actually been to 18th Street at the beginning and end of school times? Because there is a huge amount of vehicles parked on East 18th with all the parents dropping off children and picking up children. So if we add bikes to that mix, it's going to be pretty dangerous. And 18th is extremely steep. We live in a mountainous region. It's not ideal for lots of bikes. Unfortunately, we're not Amsterdam. And we also have no sidewalks on 18th Street. We have no sidewalks on Alborlynn. We have no sidewalks on Appin. So are you telling me that bike lanes are more important than sidewalks? Because that seems to be the inference. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Janet Hills. The next speaker I have is Tamara Rhodes Hung, joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Tamara Hung, and I live at 1271 Barlin Crescent And I'm here to share with everybody a video that we put together within our community. And I just wanted to state that we have the permission of all of the parents of the children that are speaking on the video.
Should come.
Uh-oh. I don't think we have audio. One day we're just gonna push a button. Stay tuned for station identification.
Is it on our side? Because both of their volumes.
But should be extra, should go through extra. It's gonna happen.
Can we just share it from the YouTube? Because it.
So what I'm going to suggest is that maybe we can have the video, I'll have a different speaker come up, and we'll take the video and we're going to give it to one of our staff, and they'll use it as a slideshow of their own, and we'll try if that works, because I can clearly see that all of the volume settings are on from that computer, and so perhaps we can transfer it to another computer and have it come in as a slideshow.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're able to assist with that?
Sorry. It's okay. Thank you.
So we'll go on to the next speaker and we'll come right back again. So I believe Jillian Const is the next speaker. Is Jillian joining us virtually this evening? We have a slideshow up now. Okay, I see Jillian Const is now a panelist. You're marked as muted, Jillian. Can you hear me? Hi, Jillian. You're marked as muted in the system. Can you hear me? Oh.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can now, clearly. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great, thank you. So good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Jillian Const and I live on Viewlin Drive, but I am representing Lynn Valley Community Association. And of course, I was an Eastview mum. So our comments this evening relate to the whole project, because the solutions being proposed for this central sector may not be deemed to be suitable or the best solutions further down Mountain Highway, and it doesn't make sense to consider them piecemeal. So we are dismayed to learn that staff are proposing to remove a lane from Mountain Highway. There was no suggestion of this at the public input session that we attended. This proposal is not the right solution, nor is it coming at the right time. In 2018, MOTI cautioned that there was already insufficient capacity for vehicles along the Mountain Highway corridor. At the same time, Council approved the redevelopment of Emery Village to include over 400 units. The Lynn Valley Town Centre plan is still not fully built out, with more units still to be added. And we have no idea how this will impact traffic along this corridor. And further, provincial legislation now allows for up to 4 units to be built on single-family lots. TransLink has recently indicated there will be cuts to bus services on the North Shore, which will drive more people back into their cars. In 2019, the Mountain Highway interchange was completed, resulting in major delays for Lynn Valley residents driving south on Mountain Highway. We would suggest there are 2 better alternatives to the creation of buffered bike lanes on Mountain Highway. The Lynn Creek Trail, just to the east of Arborlynn, was designated as a multi-use trail many years ago, and it is well used by cyclists. Viewlin and Arborlynn via 20th is a safer and much more inviting route than Mountain Highway, which is a busy truck, car and bus route. A new multi-use path has recently been created in Kirkstone Park, which will connect Lynn Valley Town Centre with the Lutet overpass. Do we need a third biking option? Eliminating one northbound lane will result in rat running up Arborlynn, and I know that's later in the project, but as I said, we don't think this can be considered piecemeal. Arborlynn has a 30K playground zone, which is already often ignored. With less capacity on Mountain Highway, how will emergency vehicles get through when the southbound lane is gridlocked? Where will emergency vehicles, handy dart, garbage and delivery trucks pull in without further blocking traffic? In April 2024, we wrote to Mayor and Council about the congestion along this corridor, indicating that we were aware of the safety improvement project between Arborlynn and Lynn Valley Road, and asking that the need to improve north-south traffic flow be urgently considered as an integral part of that project. Despite assurances from staff that they were working with partners to improve traffic conditions, we believe this project will increase congestion. We're looking to council to keep people and goods moving efficiently in and out of your biggest town centre. Thank you for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you very much for your comments, Gillian Const. Okay, we're gonna go back to the previous speaker, Tamara Rhodes Hung, who I believe is connected through a staff computer off the side. And are we able to see that presentation? And more importantly, are we able to hear that presentation? So it may be possible that the original recording doesn't have the audio set up on it. Unfortunately, I can't spend too much more of the council meeting waiting on that. I think you get the gist of it. I think the intent of it is students talking about safety to and from the school. I see Tamara Rhodes Hung, would you like to come up and maybe add your commentary to it? But we're not going to have the audio at this time. Okay, we can try that.
If we put it back to the beginning, then I can just try and
Syncing
start
it up will be very hard.
It will.
So just
I'll
play
just
the audio.
play it. Yeah.
What's your name?
Cooper,
What school do you go to?
Eastville Elementary. My name's Lucas. I'm 11. I go to Ross Road. Hello, my name's Kiara. I'm 11 years old, and I go to Eastville. My name's Sandra. I go to Ross Road Elementary. I'm 9 years old. My name's Amelia. I'm 8 years old, and I go to Eastview School.
And how do you feel about the safety walking to school on Kirkstone and Mountain Highway? Not good. Why?
Because it's too busy.
How do you feel about crossing the road?
What happened last week when you were riding your bike home from school?
I rode my bike into a car because I couldn't see it coming. And it didn't stop properly at a stop sign.
How did that make you feel?
Scared. Not very safe. Like, I feel like when you're crossing, the people don't pay attention to the kids. And they can't really see you in general. Like, the people that are turning, they can't even see you. They go way too fast. I feel unsafe. Because they rush to turn right, yeah, and then like when you're crossing, some of them will like cut in front of you. It's not safe.
Yeah, why?
Because the cars are going too fast. Yeah. I feel like the cars are going too fast when I turn the corners, and I have to pay more attention like when people like me are crossing. Green light, too safe because of all the cars that are speeding. And when cars are running red lights, I feel like it's too bumpy. It's very very narrow. Like you can't. It's really hard to pass people. It's very uneven. It's hard to keep a scooter on because it's very bumpy, and it's just really unsafe.
Thank you for all of your efforts in trying to get that together for us. I just wanted to conclude with, I think what I get from my kids especially is when we're walking, there's just the cars are literally right there. So my little even said, if I sneezed and like tripped, boom, I would be right out there. And that's scary for them. And it's scary for me too. Scary for a lot of people. I don't even like to walk. My jacket is blowing in the wind. I think it's going to just get caught on like a car going by. So definitely some improvements to the sidewalks. You know, whether or not there's bike lanes there or not. I think the big issue is that the cars are just too close to the pedestrians and the sidewalks are quite uneven and decrepit. If someone were to trip and fall right out into traffic, it is so easy to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And we do have that video file, so we'll circulate it to the council as well.
Thank you.
And again, if anybody actually has speech notes or anything else they want to share with us, not only can you email it around to the council, and this isn't a public hearing issue, so it can be emailed at any time you want. But if you have it here tonight with you and you'd like to drop it off, just leave it on the table and we'll make sure that it gets copied to all of the council at that time. The next speaker I have is Duncan Wilcox, joining us here in person. Welcome. When you are ready, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor Little and council, for your time. Thanks for your public service and all the work you do. I am a Lynn Valley resident. I like to ride my e-bike up and down Mountain Highway for trips to Rona, Canadian Tire, take my child to various events. I drive up and down that corridor a lot too. Can't hear me very well. Okay, is that better? I drive up and down there a fair bit as well. I think really I had some things prepared, but after that video, I think really I have to say this is about values. Do we value the people who live in the community and who are feeling unsafe, and you can see how unsafe they are on a day-to-day basis, or do we value people who want to drive their cars up and down that corridor? So I'm really glad to see that the road safety improvements are for the council. I strongly support the road safety improvements. I think we have to think about the 30% of the people in our community who do not drive. That includes kids. Kids don't drive, but they deserve the opportunity to walk up and down the streets. They are some of the most vulnerable people in our community, and they're the ones that deserve the extra care of making that road safety. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for working on this project. It's so important.
Thank you for your comments, Duncan Wilcox. Next speaker I have is Heather Hughes. Welcome. When you're ready, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Heather Hughes. I live at 3399 Church Street in Lynn Valley. I've lived there for a very long time. I commute daily off the North Shore for about 35 years. So I work in Burnaby, so I go up and down Mountain Highway quite regularly. So I have some problems with the report. First of all, the traffic study that was done from 2022 to 2023 is a very different traffic route than we are dealing with right now. Even since September, there has been increased traffic coming up and down Mountain Highway, leaving the North Shore. Oh, by the way, I should have made it clear, I am against this proposal. That maybe wasn't clear at the beginning. I see backing up being a big problem on Mountain Highway. If you go to a single lane, I see it backing up below 18th, all the way down to the bottom. I see it backing up onto the highway. If we go to single lanes, I see there being a problem getting out of Deep Cove into Lynn Valley because you won't be able to use the access that's been created by the new exchange down there. I see potential accidents happening because people are sitting on the highway trying to get across from the west side, like from Burnaby and that. We have a lot of densification. We have laneway houses coming. We have more apartments. We have more people coming. So to cut down one more route to make it less is not a reasonable choice in my mind. I 100% agree that the sidewalks need to be improved. The hedges that are over those sidewalks need to be cut back. People need to maintain their hedges and get them off the sidewalks. People should feel safe walking on the sidewalks. They are 100% too old. Bike lane wise, Arborlynn is a way better choice. I have also biked up and down Mountain Highway. It's an unpleasant road to bike on, for sure. It's also the steepest road we have. Don't bike on it. That would be my call. I also, in the report, it talks a lot about traffic stuff. If we're changing the road because of bad driving, let's try some more traffic enforcement. People racing up Mountain Highway, 100% should get a ticket. If they're going through intersections, like make the intersections better marked, give people tickets, fine, put some police out, help pay for the crossing guards, whatever it isn't just about taking away the lane. That isn't going to solve the problem. One of the people earlier mentioned about going through the arterial routes. 100% that's going to happen. I did it coming here tonight. 29th was blocked. Again, a road that was changed. So there's a big backup into Lynn Valley over 29th. So what did I do? I turned off 29th, went up St. James, came all the way along St. James, down Lonsdale till here. I'm sure those people that live on St. James weren't thrilled by the 50 cars that went by them. But if there's nowhere out, and that's the only way you can get around, that's what you're going to do. My commute is already long enough. Adding one less lane or taking away a lane on Mountain Highway is just going to make it that much worse. And I'm only one, of course, of many people who commute off the North Shore. Many, many people do it. I think I'm out of time and I don't know what else I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Heather Skews. Okay. Well, I don't think the first one's going to take too much time. It's just a grant application. Okay, so we're going to move on to the regular business here. So we have the reports from council staff. This is the item 2.1, the grant funding application, Spirit Trail Eastern Extension, Seymour to Windridge, Berkley. See the report there before you. Are there any comments from staff? I'll be moving the recommendation. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Back. Just my comments on it. For all of these kinds of projects in our community, we do have to look for grants to try to share the cost with other levels of government where we can. Because if we don't, the monies will just go to other communities. And so we have to have projects lined up. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of these projects are going to go ahead in the fashion that they're set out, but we have to get the grant applications in place for them to be considered. That's my comment. Councillor Back, is there a seconder on the matter?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Little. Not too much to add. Certainly, this is funding that would help move this project along and help ease in the burden on our taxpayers. The second part of the recommendation is just that we confirm our support for the Spirit Trail Eastern Extension. And I don't think anything has changed as far as I'm concerned. This is a priority of council to see that we eventually complete the eastern sections. So I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'm fine with the grant application, part of it for this section. We have yet to actually formalize the northern route, which was the direction that council gave to staff to focus on. I am a bit, I'm just wondering why we have to confirm the priority of the eastern extension. We have given direction on this. And, you know, when we're talking about priorities such as lowering the taxes, dealing with the sewage treatment plant, dealing with a recent atmospheric river that has caused havoc in Lynn Valley, Capilano, the Seymour, I need to see the list of projects that we're looking at before I can say that connecting some trails that are already there on the northern side of Mount Seymour Parkway is a priority. This project is a $20 million project. It is not reducing the impact on the taxpayer, even if we get grants, and we don't know if we're going to get them. And we don't know if our half $10 million. If we can even afford that, given the situation that we're in with the sewage treatment plant and the cost of utilities. So I would like to support the first part. I'm certainly understanding from staff that we don't have funding for a complete spirit trail within the budget. So I'm not sure why we had to add that in here to make it complicated.
To be clear, Mr. Cohen, so we had already given our consent to go on with the project. So I guess is the material impact, that second piece, that it won't be considered amongst changes to the capital plan going forward?
Yeah, so through the mayor, the language you've got there in the third recommendation is a standard language that the BC Active Transportation Committee want to see in a type of motion. It doesn't change what council's provided to us in direction as passed. We know that we're in a fiscally constrained environment, and through the budget process, I'm sure we'll be talking about the Spirit Trail east of Windridge as an example. And staff are planning to come back early in 2025 to talk about alignments and everything east of Windridge.
A motion worded in this exact fashion is a requirement of the grant.
Yes.
It's a
Requirement, those are two different things.
the former motion didn't meet your needs. This does. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the requirements are, but I'll look into that myself. I guess the other thing about the Spirit Trail is that in the spirit of the Spirit Trail, we cannot achieve what that original spirit was about, because the original idea of the Spirit Trail was to go to Horseshoe Bay, to Deep Cove on the waterfront, So because we're going to have to be flexible in that regard, because we've got industry on the waterfront, and we can't access many of the pieces of land that would connect it along the waterfront, we're having to go up either end of a mountain. West Van, I understand, cannot achieve the Spirit Trail from Horseshoe Bay east because of the topography. They just cannot do it. And I don't think they're pursuing it at this time. Ours is equally challenging, not as much, but certainly it's challenging. And so I would like staff, when it comes back to talk about in the new year, that we look at some flexibility on the pathways and the widths, and not look at taking trees down to accommodate it, because we're trying to keep this wide metered path. I think there needs to be some flexibility, because we're really not achieving the spirit of the trail the way that it was originally conceived. And I'd like to use what we already have rather than cut new swaths or run bridges over canyons at great cost to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. See no further speakers on the matter. Oh, Councillor Pope.
Late. I just want to remind this council that, there's always this discussion that links the Spirit Trail to funding, and that budgets are tight and on and on. However, as of December 31st, 2023, in the district's unaudited statement of the Growing Communities Fund, we have $10 million in there, which is, as far as I know, still in there, which was allocated and given to us by the province, by the provincial government. And it was on that basis that we decided to move forward, at least partly on that basis, we decided to move forward with the Spirit Trail. Somehow the discussion gets really off track, and this $10 million is forgotten, but it was huge. And it was one of the main factors, deciding factors in moving this forward. I'm not sure why other councillors keep forgetting this, but it's there, and that money will be used for the Spirit Trail. At least that's what we were told. I asked for confirmation this afternoon of if that $10 million is still there in full. I understand maybe 100,000 has so far been used for road upgrades, which are probably the accessing point in Maplewood there. But other than that, the money's all still there. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Very much. Spurred some discussion. I've got Councillors Forbes, Mom, Urian, Hanson. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Thank you, Worship. Whoops. Thank you, Worship. I think Councillor Murray covered some of the things that I was concerned about. I was concerned about the second part of the motion, why we had to reconfirm that. We can only confirm funds for 1 year at a time. So we look at our budget every year, and depending on our capital costs, our operating costs, what we can allocate to certain projects. So if it's a very long ongoing project, it doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't going to become a different priority that comes up for it, or that the funds have to be used on a contingency basis. I get very frustrated at looking at reports. This isn't anyone's particular fault, but I get very frustrated as a council member when I'm looking at reports that back up what they're saying that are 2011, 2012, 2013. They're old plans. Things have changed. Times have changed. So I think the bicycle master plan is 2012. So I get very frustrated that we haven't updated those. I ask for it all the time, that council gets those updated. Our staff gets them updated and brings them to council. I'm just wondering too, why, if the deadline for this grant was October 31st, why are we just talking about it now?
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, so through the mayor, we typically have some, because typically these types of grant applications just come through council and that takes some time. We have a little bit of leeway after the submission date to get that endorsement from council, which I believe is November 30th. So we have an extra month to seek this endorsement from council.
Okay. The other thing, I have a bunch of other notes, but I'm in favor of the Spirit Trail, but I also have asked, also for the possibilities of a northern route, but I also asked for costs. So are these costs that are in here, you're talking about the first part of the segment, 379 from TransLink?
So through the mayor, in terms of what's in the package, that's really focused just on the Seymour River to the Windridge section.
Windridge.
And the reason for that is that's basically shovel ready in terms of the segments. In terms of questions from council as it relates to other segments, costs, alignments and the likes as well, we're going to be having a really a good in-depth discussion shortly after the Christmas New Year break to work through all that information.
Good. I look forward to that. I was also going to mention what some members of the public have already mentioned for 8.2, that back east, they are now trying to encourage people to use trails that are not on roads, that are in forested trails or recreational trails like that, because of the silent trails are healthier for people. So I just wanted to make a point about that.
Councillor, can I just have you speak a little more directly into the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
And that was it. So I don't have anything more to say.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Next speaker I have is Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I recognize that the final decision on the route of the Spirit Trail is pending. There's still a lot of analysis to do, including financial. This report from staff is very specific to the initial segment. It talks about a fairly fixed link with limited options, and it does not preclude or hinder future discussions of alignment choices. So I'll take that at face value. I believe that staff are looking for ways to mitigate costs to the district. I think everyone is, because we're in tight financial times. I also believe that staff are doing what we asked them to do, is find other funding sources. When I got first elected on council, the first budget that we worked on was quite high. And I remember, you know, turf fields, artificial turf fields and the Spirit Trail being priorities. So I support this report. However, we will be looking at budgets as a council in the coming months, so things can change. But at this point, overall, I will support the staff's recommendation.
Councillor Ma, Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. My comments similar to Councillor Murray's and Councillor Ma's. Happy to support this proposal. Happy to support this route for this section of the Spirit Trail. On the budgeting issue, of course, and I'm happy to support the statement that this is a municipal priority. Happy to do all of that. Beyond that, though, on the budgeting point, we're going to have to consider every initiative in the context of other competing initiatives. And I would not want my vote in favor of this motion today to be anyway tying my hands with respect to competing priorities that this council is going to have to choose between as we move forward in future meetings on budget discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Okay, I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried unanimously. Okay. Next item is item 3.2, Mountain Highway Safety Improvements, Lynn Valley Road to Arborlynn Drive Central Segment. I think people are well aware of this now, but I'm going to go to staff for presentation.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just while Matt gets set up for the presentation, obviously we have a focused evening tonight on the transportation discussions. I just wanted to introduce a handful of folks from my team. Mac Fitzgerald before you, who'll be presenting most of the slides this evening for the various items, is our transportation planner. We also have Demetra Barbacuda, who is also from our transportation planning team, and she's joining us virtually. And then beside me, we have Ihab Taha, who recently joined us a couple of weeks ago as our section manager of transportation. And we have Richard Burberry here as well as our senior project manager on the Mountain Highway project as well. So there's a few folks here to be able to respond to any questions. For this particular item, though, I think it's important for me to introduce just for a couple of minutes, just to help set some context of what the report is and what the report is not. So firstly, as the Mayor noted, this particular report only focuses on what we call the central segment, and that is between 18th and 27th Street. Staff do plan to come back in the spring to talk about the southern segment, and this is the area that's closest to Highway 1. Staff are certainly mindful of the traffic congestion that we have in and around the Highway 1 interchange. We want to have a discussion with Council in terms of what opportunities are there either on or off Mountain Highway as it relates to the various transportation modes that we're trying to accommodate. Secondly, again, as the Mayor shared, a decision from Council this evening is important as paving on this section of Mountain Highway between 18th and 27th is planned for next summer. And so we need to identify, are we repaving with the existing configuration or whether we'll be making changes next summer. And lastly, and probably most importantly, this report is not primarily about bike lanes. Instead, this report responds to what we are hearing from the community, as well as seeing in data that vehicle safety and pedestrian safety and comfort are the key drivers that are supporting staff's proposed recommendation for safety improvements along the central segment of Mountain Highway. Overall, this report really boils down to three fundamental questions for councils that are connected. The first one is, does council support creating a safer environment for pedestrians and drivers along the Mountain Highway corridor? If that answer was yes, the second question, which is more difficult, is does council support reallocating space from a northbound vehicle lane to improve the safety for vehicles and pedestrians and creating a more inviting space for pedestrians? If the answer to that from council is yes, then we have some leftover space between intersections that have insufficient width for a vehicle lane. And so what would council like us to do with that space in creating a buffer between walking pedestrians and moving vehicles? I know this topic has strong interest from both council and the community. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to hand over to Mac for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Peter.
Fitzgerald, perhaps let's define brief presentation. About how much time do you need, sir?
I'd say about 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Floor is yours.
You can put on the clock. So as we've heard from many of the speakers today, Mountain Highway is an important multimodal corridor with council and community interest in achieving safety and mobility improvements to improve our active transportation and vehicle networks. So just beginning with a bit of a timeline of the project. So this project was initiated in fall 2022 with a technical analysis of current conditions, including traffic and collision data. The results of this analysis informed our first phase of public engagement conducted in spring of 2023, where we heard opportunities, concerns, and priorities from the community. The community input was used to develop design options for the corridor that were shared with the community during a second phase of public engagement, which was conducted in the fall of 2023. This engagement also helped to confirm the alignment of the cycling network with the south segment following a neighborhood bikeway condition along East 18th. And with this allowing us to prioritize the southern segment on Mountain Highway for motor vehicle movements in the future. With a preferred option identified for each section of the corridor, staff conducted further design work in 2024 to prioritize initial investments that fit the current budget for the Mountain Highway Safety Improvements Project. So the first thing is that I want to say about this slide is that achieving the full vision of the Mountain Highway Safety Improvements Project will require a phased delivery approach. In the short term, targeted improvements are recommended for the central segment of the corridor. This segment of Mountain Highway between East 27th Street and East 18th Street presents an important opportunity to achieve high value for our investment. First, this section of Mountain Highway requires repaving, and coordination between minor curb reallocation and paving will help to achieve cost savings and minimize disruptions to residents. Second, the central segment includes several high priority projects that deliver improvements to all modes. This includes the introduction of left turn bays to address observed overtaking and rear end collisions, improving traffic safety, visibility, and flow. By repurposing the excess northbound travel lane in this flat section of Mountain Highway, buffered cycling lanes can be achieved, providing separation between pedestrians and motor vehicles. So to better illustrate these changes to council, staff have developed cross sections at key locations, which I'll now go over with you. Beginning in the south section, south end of the section, so at East 18th Street facing north, this image depicts safety improvements for the existing pedestrian crossing in the south leg of the intersection. As you can see, wider curbs have been introduced to help increase space for pedestrians waiting to cross the road and reduce the crossing distance in the intersection at this important entrance to Eastview Elementary School. These changes improve safety for vulnerable road users by increasing the visibility between moving traffic and pedestrians who are crossing the street. Just south of this intersection, existing conditions will be retained with 2 northbound travel lanes for motor vehicles. As previously mentioned, staff are recommending that left turn bays are added to key intersections along this corridor. The above image is generally applicable to northbound and southbound travel at the intersections of East 20th and East 24th Street. The addition of left turn bays will improve traffic safety and visibility for all road users by reducing the risk of left turn opposing, head-on, and overtaking collisions. These collisions are especially important to address as they are more likely to lead to serious injury or fatality than other types of collisions. Left turn bays will also help to keep through traffic moving. Beyond the intersections, these changes leave a portion of the existing Mountain Highway road space underutilized, with insufficient space for a travel lane. In this space, staff recommend that a buffered bike lane be implemented with the primary intent of increasing separation for pedestrians from motor vehicles. For much of the central section of Mountain Highway, sidewalks are constructed against the curb, as is shown on the right side of this image. Bike lanes present a cost-effective solution to achieving greater separation for pedestrians, as the design is achieved by line painting. Council could also provide us with an alternative direction to explore other cost-effective uses for this underused space. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I did just want to say, so we originally wanted to have this in a workshop so that we could sort of free flow question and answer as members of council had concerns they wanted answered. And so what I'm inclined to do is to have an opportunity for all members of council to ask some questions before we get a motion on the floor. And so if members of council would like to ask questions leading up to it, Councillor Murray, you're first on the list.
Or ask questions or express concern about.
That's your choice, but I am going to give you a follow-up opportunity to speak once the motion's on the floor. So
Then I'll have two opportunities.
fill your boots.
I don't mind
Go for
taking
it.
two.
Great.
Well, you know, I have to start out by saying, I hate that it's one or the other. I hate that we are always trying to take away from one to help another. That's how I feel, like, honestly. We are becoming more divisive in our community with some of the decisions that we're making as a municipality. And I feel very uncomfortable with that. And I don't want my community to have to jump into signing petitions because they feel like they have not understood or are clear about a significant change. I have 3 children, and I completely care about all people that live in this community and the safety about all people. That's why I sit in this seat. I do this work because I care immensely about how this community operates. And certainly safety issues of children going to school are the utmost concern for everybody in this room, I'm sure. But to, you know, take out a major lane in a major arterial in a community that has a minimum of 1,500 cars coming to it based on 5 significant developments that we know about right now, I think is putting the cart before the horse. And I don't know why we go down this road with the kind of communication that we've been doing in the last few years. A lot of it is about surveys, and I'd love for somebody from staff to talk to me about why we make decisions or use surveys as much as we do. I find surveys to be challenging in that people feel awkward in even answering the questions because it makes them feel like they're being led down another path, and they have become apprehensive about it. Another thing, Mayor Little, and I'm glad you're giving us this opportunity, but I would have thought that a major decision like this to take a lane out of Mountain Highway, which is a major arterial in the central part of the district, would have certainly have accommodated a couple of workshops to kind of massage it and talk about it and really understand it and hear from the community instead of an item that was put on a special meeting at 5 o'clock on a Monday. And having the community sort of jump into action because they didn't know anything about it. It was posted on Facebook and it garnered in 48 hours, 1,200 and counting signatures. And we usually don't have this many people in the audience on a Monday night talking about a single issue. Certainly, we cut hedges back regularly and look after our degrading infrastructure such as sidewalks. Mountain Highway on the west side has one of the widest sidewalks, like walk down Mount Seymour Parkway, because it's got that buffered grass path on one side. So I have to say that let's start with improving the surface, cutting back the hedges, and creating some safety mechanisms first, before we go to this very extreme perspective of removing an entire lane with a community that has not been built out yet. Like, I don't understand that. And council needs to be a part of all of that discussion from the beginning, not just at the end so we can put our hands up. Because I'm not going to be putting my hand up for this one. We have much too much work to deal with.
People may have diverse opinions here. We don't shout or boo people. We don't clap and make people feel intimidated from sharing their opinions. That's not welcome in the council chamber. Thank you, Councillor Murray, for your comments. Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Back.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Thank you very much to everyone who's come out tonight to weigh in on this particular issue. First of all, I want to thank staff for all the work to get us to this point. It may seem like this has just come up on a special agenda and it kind of came out of nowhere, but I know that staff have been working on this for many months and engaging with the community in different ways. First of all, I do want to thank Mr. Cohen for highlighting the fact that this shouldn't be positioned as a bike lane project, because it's not. It's very much a road safety project, looking at a whole corridor in the district that is one of the more dangerous corridors, one of the less comfortable and unsafe corridors for people who are not in their vehicles. It's kids that are just trying to get to school, as we heard about tonight. It's a senior trying to walk to the bus stop. And I think we can all agree, as Councillor Murray has highlighted, that we all value safety, people's safety, and particularly for some of the most vulnerable road users. So I think tonight we're really looking at a couple of different things here. I mean, we agree that this needs to be a safer corridor. When we talk about what happens between the two curbs, what makes the most sense? What's going to create the most value for the most amount of people? Is it bike lanes? And I'm somebody who commutes and rides an e-bike all the time. I'm not sure that it is. And I think that's going to need some more exploration by this council. And so I'm not sure that I'm prepared to support bike lanes through this corridor tonight. But what I am very much interested in doing is moving forward on the safety improvements that we can make as soon as possible. When we look at bike connections between town centers, while from Lynn Creek to Lynn Valley, this is the most direct route. And on an e-bike, you can do it. And sometimes when I'm just coming home and I want to get home quickly, I will ride up Mountain Highway, but it is a very, very unpleasant experience. So I think we do need to prioritize different routes when it comes to cycling through this area. But perhaps reallocating a lane does make sense, and maybe it makes sense. And I'll maybe ask this question of staff, whether we've explored a bus only lane, southbound bus only lane as one option. Moves a lot more people, certainly than cars. And the data that is being presented to us does support the fact that we don't need the capacity that second northbound lane is giving us right now. Again, we have to obviously look to the future and what our demand is going to be, but would like to know from staff if we've looked at the potential for a bus priority lane as one way. Would just like to know what safety improvements we can make here without reallocating road space right now. Understand why we're being asked to make a decision tonight, though, given the paving schedule that's before us next year. I guess those are my comments right now. I certainly I don't want this to be as divisive as it is. We shouldn't be governing by petition, and nobody should have to feel like that's the only way to get things done in the community. So I'm interested just to get an answer, I guess, on that question, how we've explored using that lane or reallocating it. And those are my initial comments. Thank you.
Councillor Back, Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. On the one hand, I do think there's broad consensus within this council and within our community for safety improvements wherever we can find them. On the other hand, to be blunt, I do not think our community at this time has much appetite for removing full vehicle lanes from arterial roads in the district with all the circumstances that are prevailing at this time. So the question that I would ask, very similar to the question posed or thoughts advanced by Councillor Back, has staff considered an option that would improve safety, improve the active transportation capacity of Mountain Highway without the full-blown step of repurposing a third vehicle lane on this road at this time? Thank you.
Mr. Fitzgerald or Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, so through the mayor, really when we look at pedestrian safety, because that's kind of the focus here in terms of walking down and across Mountain Highway, the typical way that we would look at that is in terms of how can we create more separation if you're going down Mountain Highway, and space is really limited and tight. And so the only way that we were identifying without heavy investment into concrete was identifying a buffer zone between cars and pedestrians as they walk down Mountain Highway. And when folks are crossing Mountain Highway, the more we can reduce that distance for them to cross Mountain Highway, it improves safety. So that's where we're proposing those curb bulges at 18th Street. So I know that there was other questions in terms of have we looked at other options. I think the fundamental question is council prepared to reallocate space on Mountain Highway in terms of the current 3-lane configuration? If the answer to that was to be no, we can look at different options with the existing roadway, but we won't have the opportunity to bring in curb bulges and buffer zones between pedestrians and vehicles, which is really what we were trying to achieve through the proposal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I may be repeating some things that have already been said. I think it's obvious that safety is important. It's the paramount issue, but it's safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. I value the work of our staff and their expertise, but I do have some questions, and it's kind of a follow-up to Councillor Hansen's. What other things have been tried? Have we worked with the RCMP on increased enforcement? Have we put in restrictions? Like there's been other restrictions, no right turn on red happening throughout the district. Has that been tried here? I drove up and down the route the other day with members of a couple of members of the community, and we're taking a very different look at things. And there's a lot of opportunities to make some improvements. Like we saw that video about the sidewalks. Has that been looked at as a step on its own? So I'll just finish and then I'll let you answer. I heard about the Lutette overpass by the city. And my understanding, I don't cycle in this area. I live over in Pemberton, as most people know. But there's the Lutette overpass. How will that change? How would that change and provide another option for people to get north down south to Lynn Creek? So was that taken into account? I think back when the lanes on Mount Seymour Parkway were narrowed, and the goal was to slow down traffic. At the same time, it provided space for a bike lane. So we were able to achieve, two objectives without pitting people or groups against each other. Is there that sort of option here, or is it as either or as the report paints out? I was just looking to see what other options there are, because it seemed to have worked there.
Got a couple of questions embedded. Can I check in with staff on those?
I'll leave that for now.
Mr. Cohen?
I'm going to try and answer some of those questions. Hopefully I took the notes down correctly. In terms of enforcement, we know that there is speeding concerns across the district, and us working with the RCMP, who are short-staffed, it's quite challenging for us to be able to get sufficient resources from the RCMP to really embed a strong enforcement system. We wish it was a different situation, but the reality is that resources are quite tight for the RCMP. In terms of the second question there, one of the key things that we're trying to do with the proposed road reconfiguration, and that could be done without reallocating, well, it does require reallocating, sorry, is creating left turn bays at certain key intersections. If I use Kirkstone as an example on Mountain Highway, the 5-year of data that we look at is between 2016 and 2020 before we started this effort, roughly one collision every couple of months. And predominantly the biggest collision type was a left turn. So if I'm going southbound on Mountain in the single lane, I'm trying to cross 2 lanes, I'm getting hit by a northbound vehicle. And we do have speed as an issue on Mountain Highway. It's in certain spots 15 kilometers higher than the posted speed limit as the average speed. So that's kind of what we were trying to do in terms of going from 2 lanes northbound and at key intersections having 1 northbound and a left turn pocket, just to really increase that visibility for particularly southbound
drivers. There's certainly other bits and pieces that we can look at following this in terms of smaller scale improvements. But really when it came to road safety, the biggest, for want of better expression, bang for buck is to look at going from 2 lanes to 1 lane and improving those sight lines. So I certainly appreciate all the comments from council in terms of concerns of reallocating space, but just to give you some context of where staff's proposal was for that. The third item was in terms of connecting Lynn Valley and Lynn Creek and other initiatives and infrastructure. That's certainly part of the considerations. We look at it at a network perspective. And as I kind of shared before, this isn't primarily a bike project. This is a local neighborhood level pedestrian improvement focus. So yes, there's different connections and we can certainly look at on and off Mountain Highway for bikes moving forward. But the real key priority here for one of them was pedestrian safety. And then it's the either or component. From staff's perspective, really looking at a step change in pedestrian improvement, it does bring the difficult discussion and decision of whether we reallocate some vehicle space for that additional space that we need, whether it's for buffering or curb extensions for pedestrians. That being said, if the decision from council was to not go ahead per the staff recommendation, we can certainly look at more minor upgrades in terms of sight lines and sidewalk conditions and the likes as well. That's certainly something we can look at as day-to-day work for sure.
Yeah. If I can just have a quick follow-up question. Thank you, Peter. When I was driving at night, I noticed certain sections are quite dark. Is that part of your analysis as well to look at lighting and potentially time such that it's not on at midnight to keep the residents up? But so that's one question. And the second question that came up in some of my discussions, the speed limit. Of course, everyone knows, if someone gets hit at 30 kilometers, it's less severe as someone getting hit at 50 or higher. In terms of, was any analysis done looking at putting in a 30K speed limit in and around Eastview? And, I heard back from people, well, that's our arterial road, you might not want to do that. But I know of other examples of that. I think of St. Thomas Aquinas School, going down that hill. It's a 30, and that's a major route. It's a bus route. So I'm just wondering, we want to make it safer, but can we do it in other ways? So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Forbes. That wasn't okay.
Sure. So through the mayor, in terms of those couple of quick questions, lighting is something we can certainly look at as a general operational matter. So we can certainly take that away in terms of that piece. In terms of the speed limit, the priority for us was looking at infrastructure. Can infrastructure help encourage either safer space or lower speeds? That's kind of the first priority. If we weren't successful in the recommendation, we can certainly look at speed zones because we have that capability around schools, and we might just take that away and probably report back to council in the future if that's the path we go down as well.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in case anybody doesn't know, I live on Kirkstone between Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley Road, and I have for, don't tell anybody, 40 years. So I'm very, very familiar with traffic and congestion and safety for schools. I had 2 sons who went to the schools in the area. So that's just to let you know where my background comes from. I have 4 pages of comments I was going to make tonight, but I don't, obviously, I'm not going to get to make 4 pages worth. So important points. I think as Councillor Mary has said, I also think that we don't need to go for the gold standard right away and lose a lane of traffic when we're already congested. It's already backed up. There are problems with the design of the interchange. So maybe let's go for the safety standards, which are what everybody in this room wants. And some of those might be that we do fix the crosswalks. We do something that makes them more noticeable, stand out, make them safer. I walk my dog all the time. Well, that's one of the routes I come back home on Mountain Highway with my dog. And the sidewalks are in terrible conditions.
if we put a proper curb up on those sidewalks, and if we fix the cracks that are in the sidewalks or replace the sidewalks, and if we got the residences to trim back all the hedging, because I have to literally lean out like this from some of the residents as well, just to walk one person on the sidewalk. So there's a lot of those littler things that aren't going to cost a lot of money, but might get a big bang for the dollar. And I think that's one step, and we should start there with the smaller steps and see what the results are. The other thing is, although you say it's not a cycling route, it is a cycling route. Maybe it's B, not A of your points, but I just wanted to point out that there is the Casana-Lutet and the Salop through Kirkstone Park bicycle route, which is paved. And I wasn't really in favor of paving through Kirkstone Park, but in any case, that's what's happened. It's almost finished at Kirkstone. So there'll be a route that pedestrians, it's a pedestrian and a cyclist path, and there'll be a much safer route where people could go over that way and go over the highway by the overpass and then down however they want to on the other side. So it's not, we have options that we can put some parts of what we're concerned about on Mountain Highway. We can put it somewhere else. The other thing I'd like to mention as far as traffic, with me living on Kirkstone, and also when I canvassed and walked around and talked to a lot of the voters and residents, I was shocked to find out that there are people that come all the way from Capilano and Edgemont, and they go up 29th, down Williams, down Kirkstone, down Mountain Highway to get onto the bridge. And the reason why they do that is because they want to get to the closest accessibility to get onto the highway. And that's Mountain Highway. So it's not just local traffic in Lynn Valley. We have traffic coming from all over. Another problem is that construction that happens, they can't go down Mountain Highway. They're supposed to turn and come on to Kirkstone. So we have all kinds of different traffic problems that are in that area that are dangerous. And I'm glad that Kirkstone finally got 30K on part of it and finally got the stopping for the car moved back, because I was always afraid a big heavy truck would come around that corner off Mountain Highway and just plow head on into a vehicle. So, and I do know about the boulevards that we're talking about. The west side is better. It has more space of boulevard from the sidewalk to the road. So the west side of Mountain Highway is better. The east side in some areas doesn't even have anything. And in some spots, it doesn't even have a proper sidewalk. So both sides of the street are not in the same condition. But I would say, I kind of laughed because I'm sure staff didn't mean this, but in their, in one of their comments, they said, quote, "Bike lanes will provide immediate separation for pedestrians from motor vehicles." Well, what if we put the cyclist in there? So and then the stats from 2023, all transportation in on the North Shore, or district, 8% is transit, 77% is vehicles, 3% is cyclists, and 11% are pedestrians. So I think we have to bear in mind those numbers. It tells you where the traffic is coming from or what the congestion is coming from. It's coming from cars. And Emery Village, I was one of the people that protested against Emery Village being developed that way. There's going to be like 800 more people in that development, that one development there. Then we've got Safeway that's going to be redeveloped, and people will come down 27th and down Mountain Highway. And we've got other kinds of growth factors that are going to happen to that. Parts of Kirkstone are probably going to be TOAs, which means they can put on, how many, on the new TOA rules, if you're 800 meters out, it's going to be 12 stories.
It has not been proposed for a TOD at this time. And the only two are Fibs Exchange and Capilano University. And even though there are frequently served transit spaces throughout the lower mainland, that doesn't mean it automatically makes you a hub.
No, I understand that, but if we want to look forward and be prepared, with Lynn Valley being a major route and Mountain Highway being a major route, something's going to happen somewhere in there. And that's my other comment. For years, people who live in Lynn Valley have been praying for a north-south route. And we only have 2 routes out. God help us if we have a disaster like a wildfire or a flooding again. If we start narrowing down roads, we're starting to increase the risk of people getting out if there's a disaster anywhere. I think that's enough for now. I have more I could say, but I'm overdue.
Okay. Just my own comments on the matter. I think that we're not ready for the road reallocation in this space, but I am definitely sensitive to the comments about the experience around Eastview. And I get that if you do curb bulges, that it creates sort of a shadow effect of space that you can't use behind it necessarily for lots of purposes. You can't have it be a driving lane and then have a bump out that forces you into the other lane just to open up as a driving lane again. You're basically making some decisions if you do the bump outs in that fashion about how you're going to use the lanes leading up to it. Then it's a parking lane or it's something else, but it's not going to be a driving lane. And so I don't think there is support for that at this time. But I would like to see staff come back with something that takes into account the sidewalk resurfacing, the clearing of the sight lines, and making sure that where we reasonably can, north and south, we can do bump outs to narrow a lane without affecting losing loss of traffic on Mountain Highway proper. But obviously east and west, you're going to have a very serious discussion about what you can do to manage the speed and risk in that space. We have a culture problem around risk around these kinds of spaces where people are in such a rush to get around that they're a very poor judge of risk around kids. And so I, as a parent of 4, I have very big concerns about us not addressing that within the immediate area around an elementary school. I've been on the safety blitzes at Eastview Elementary where we walk the site with our transportation staff, with the police department, and we look at what can be done around the space. If you didn't limit it, parents would drive down the front hallway of the school to drop their kid off at the elementary school classroom. It's very hard pulling that back and making safe drop-off spots further away from the school. And it's even with marked police officers all around the spot as we're doing the safety blitz, people are still illegally coming right up and dropping off their kids in that space. And so it's something that there isn't a lot of community buy-in, unfortunately, at this point. So I think what I'm hearing from the council, though, is that there isn't enough interest for the road reallocation piece. So the motion that I think we should put on the floor for consideration and for another round of debate is that the DNV Council rejects the road reallocation proposed under the MHSI, the Mountain Highway Safety Improvement Central Segment at this time, and that the Mountain Highway Safety Improvement Central Segment is referred back to staff to address safety, the general safety issues without reallocation, and reports back to council as soon as possible.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Any discussion on that motion, which is now on the floor? Well, there's now a motion on the floor, so I'm going to put you right at the top of the list. You're first. Go ahead, Councillor Pope. You can still ask a question of staff. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to staff for coming up with this interesting approach to responding to the safety issue. I think we need to fully focus on whether this motion is driven by the need, the responsibility we have to maintain the safety of people? Or is it about, other options? Because if it's about safety, then how can we say no to making it safer for pedestrians and kids and families, students going to school, and other people in mobility? This is one of the most dangerous stretches of road in North Van. And based on ICBC collision data for the 10-year period between 2011 and 2020, Mountain Highway had 3,174 vehicle crashes, 37 collisions involving cyclists, and 52 collisions involving pedestrians. And there was just one last week involving a student and a car. So the biggest concern I'm hearing from people is about if we reduce a lane, then they're concerned about congestion, and so am I. Frankly, I've mostly seen congestion down in the areas, the southern part of Mountain Highway. And the problem there is the poorly designed highway interchange. And so I'm not clear on whether congestion further up and midway along is or should be a huge concern. But I am interested in knowing and actually having an answer to some people's questions, which is, how will reducing lanes accommodate future density?
Okay, do we have a comment ready on that? Mr. Fitzgerald, Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, so through the mayor, in terms of the existing capacity of the lanes, the numbers that we have indicate that in each direction, even during the peak hours, there is capacity in a single lane for each direction to do so. We identify that there is capacity that will take some development, but with any development that comes forward, they're going to have to do their own traffic impact assessments based on what's there at the day. It also goes hand in hand with our OCP objectives, and particularly, Lynn Valley Town Centre. We're trying to accommodate people to not be driving that are new residents in the area. And so it's kind of this two-pronged approach where we have a lot of folks using cars today, 77% or so, but our future vision is that that number goes down to 65%. So it's trying to talk about today's condition, but also we're trying to also plan for the future OCP vision in the area as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I know there have been studies around the world that actually support that, despite what the Ontario government is doing. And also, let's not compare ourselves to downtown Toronto. It's Mountain Highway. But at any rate, I'm not sure, like I support safety measures, and I think we need to do everything we possibly can to keep that corridor safe and make it safer. Some of those pictures in the video that we saw were frightening, really, to see the children right next, so close to those cars, and they're traveling at such a high speed. So I also support Councillor Back's mention of a southbound bus lane only. I think that that might be helpful to reducing congestion. And these are some of the things perhaps that, could be suggested going forward. And I guess for now, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murray, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor Little. So I'd like, based on the motion that Mayor Little has put forward and seconded by Councillor Hanson, I'd like staff to focus and prioritize pedestrian safety, such as resurfacing the sidewalks, improving sightlines, hedges, and the pole, posting a 30-kilometer speed limit in the Eastview corridor. I don't know why we wouldn't consider raised speed tables, as we have it on Kirkstone, and the City of North Vancouver has a plethora of raised speed tables on bus routes. For instance, 15th down to Lonsdale has a number of speed tables, which are basically speed bumps to slow traffic down. In the district, we resist that because we never want to impact transit, but transit is continually impacted in the city of North Vancouver, and they have one of the largest bus routes on the North Shore. We also should be looking at increased targeted enforcement. The Mount Seymour Parkway actually recently has had radar on the parkway for increased enforcement. So it does still exist, policemen with radar guns that give out tickets to people that are not doing the speed limit. I do also believe that we could think outside the box and look at some sort of, because I do believe there's quite and it may not feel like this because of the hedges and the fences from private properties, but there is quite a width in there that compared to other places on the North Shore, it's quite wide on that west side of Mountain Highway. And I also think that we should be looking at alternative ways for kids to get to school. There is Rufus that goes into the back of Eastview Elementary, although it's with the city. I mean, we share those borders and it benefits both communities. So I don't know why we wouldn't talk to the city of North Vancouver. You know, this option of, you know, take out a lane, or I think these things, and I think we should look at the whole municipality. We should be looking at trip hazards on sidewalks and not waiting until we sort of approach a more extreme perspective. We should be maintaining those sidewalks regularly because we do want people to walk. But I think this is part of a bigger challenge and a bigger issue. The reason you've got so many cars coming through this community is because people are rat running. They are rat running to get to that bridge because that bridge is inadequate to accommodate the growth in population on the North Shore. I am sorry, but the mayor sits on Translink. He is constantly echoing this, that improvements to that bridge has not happened in 50 years, longer than that, 60.
1958?
1958, we have had no reasonable improvements to that bridge. It is constantly band-aiding it. And even the Mountain Highway interchange, engineers from this municipality predicted that that interchange would fail within 5 years. And they were right. It has failed. And that is why people are driving down Kirkstone. They are going around blocks. If you calm this area, I'll tell you right now what's going to happen. Other neighborhoods are going to be impacted as well. It is irresponsible for the provincial government not to adequately fund infrastructure in communities that are growing like ours. We are not just developing. We are the entrance to the sea to sky. We are the entrance to Vancouver Island. That the ferry traffic alone that comes through this community is more than significant. So we have so many more issues that are impacting how we are having to try to address the issues within the borders of the District of North Vancouver. And those issues are out of our control because they're in the hands of the provincial government and their hands of the federal government as well. And I just, I truly take issue with senior levels of government not appropriately funding infrastructure for growth that we do not control. The federal government is allowing increased population into the country and not helping us build the infrastructure to support those people that are coming in, or the ones that live here right now. Schools, hospital, roadways, bridges, all of those things. 5 seconds. Do I get another 2 minutes? Because I only had 4 and then 2.
4 and then 4, unfortunately, but you do have another 2 minutes.
Thank you. So let's start working together and let's start addressing the needs of that infrastructure. I mean, don't even get me started on doctors and nurses. Like, it just makes me crazy to think you could go to a hospital and they could turn you away because they don't have anybody there to help you. I don't know how interior municipalities even function. It's incredible that in this country, one of the richest countries in the world, we are facing emergency rooms closed, seniors becoming homeless because we can't find the housing that they can afford on fixed incomes, young people moving out of this community because they can't find housing. I mean, it is so broken. that, and I just feel like within the municipal boundaries, we're trying to Band-Aid these problems that senior levels of government are putting on us, and we can't Band-Aid them. We can't just keep pushing traffic all the way up to the end of Lynn Valley or Mountain Highway because the bridge is not, working. We have to be able to manage it. So and we have to start pushing back far more, Mayor Little, and lobbying those senior levels of government to get them to really understand the provincial election is over, and we should invite all the MLAs and all the MPs to our community to walk them around and show them the kinds of issues that we're facing, because sometimes I don't know if they really understand what we deal with weekly in this chamber and at this table. So I want us to think outside the box. I want us to make those areas safe, and I want to make them safe, certainly from a pedestrian standpoint, where we can do some fixing quite easily before people feel like they're in danger, and before we have to go to this extreme option of making a situation that is worse even more exacerbated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, and very well said about the broader issues that we're facing in our community. That we want to talk very specifically about a street, an intersection, what's going on there, and sometimes we do have to go back up to 30,000 feet and talk about the other things that are affecting our community. There's no question that Mountain Highway, more than many of the other corridors in North Vancouver, are bearing the brunt of the inability of the bridge to manage the traffic that is coming here. I will push back a little bit and say, I actually think if we look closely at the traffic patterns, it has more to do with people commuting here than it does to do with our own population in North Vancouver. Our community has actually grown at a very slow rate, but our number of jobs created on the North Shore has grown at a much faster rate. And what you're seeing there is people coming to the North Shore in the morning. We don't see it because the lineup is out to Burnaby Lake stretch in Burnaby, but in the afternoon, you definitely see it in this area on Mountain Highway, with the number of people trying to find an alternative to leave the North Shore without having to wait in the mess at Highway 1. So your point is very valid. One other thing that was raised in there that I think I can speak to a little bit more is the question of police enforcement. We are in a challenging spot when it comes to having available resources for traffic response. I think you heard Mr. Cohen make a comment about that earlier. So many of the municipalities in the Lower Mainland are waiting for the Surrey decision to be completely implemented, because there's about 500 police officers that are serving in Surrey that once they make the full transition, those officers will be redistributed around the Lower Mainland. And the District of North Vancouver is one of those communities right now where we are way below our contract strength because we're waiting for Surrey to complete. And so our ability to have road resources dealing with speed traffic enforcement specifically, we put out special calls when we have a construction zone in an area to make sure that there's extra policing there, but on a daily basis to have general duty officers doing traffic functions around our community, we're not staffed at the moment at a level that can be broadly applied. And it stems with that broader issue, another one of those broad issues, which is the case of the implementation of the Surrey policing service. And so it's left us in a tricky spot where we can't just say, well, we'll fix the behavior, we'll change the behavior just by planting a police officer there and then affect it that way. We have to use the built form in some cases to be able to change behaviors in areas in our district. So I support this motion, made the motion, but I do look forward to staff coming back with a revised plan that looks at alternatives without road reallocation. I guess my question back to staff would then be, we want to take advantage of the repaving project that we have planned and queued up for the section north of 18th. When does our decision point at council have to be made in order to be able to be paired with that road work?
Yeah, so Mayor Little, we'll take that away to talk with our operations crews who are going to be looking after the actual paving component and exactly what decisions might be needed to in between the curbs. That's really what we're focusing on is what changes will we need to be do in between the curb. There was a comment from Councillor Miri, a speed table as an example. That is something we would need to get planned ahead of that. If it's in relation to sidewalks or things behind the curb, there's a lot more flexibility on that front. So
That should be prioritized.
yeah, so let me take that away. As I shared before, we will plan to come back in the spring to talk about the southern segment. I'm going to look away and just think about resources and timing, maybe bulk both of those discussions together and see how early in 2025 we can come back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to staff for your diligent work, painstaking work in bringing this forward. Thank you to all my council colleagues and the mayor for the comments, which have been very useful and informative. I, like the mayor and others at this council, look forward to ideas being brought back to make this area safer. Obviously, safety is a key priority. But for my part, I will not be in anything like the near future, considering the elimination of a vehicle lane on a main arterial. Certainly not a mountain highway, as has been stated by those who know this stretch of roadway well. It is already congested, and I appreciate that the science would say these two lanes one way and another can handle all the traffic, but it doesn't seem to be handling all the traffic. So there seems to be an issue there. Also, we're dealing with significant increases in population and traffic coming with Emery Place and other projects. So we have to plan ahead for greater capacity than we have today. Even the future of transit is uncertain. Who would have thought in 2024 that the future of transit is uncertain? And I do respond to Councillor Back's comment about maybe the best use of this road space would be transit. So let's consider options for this road space that address some of the most pressing needs of congestion and transportation in the district. I also do have a concern about the piecemeal approach to transportation planning on Mountain Highway, dealing with different segments at a time. I think we probably need a plan that ensures that Mountain Highway is functioning at maximum efficiency for the most dominant users. But with that, I certainly do support, and I know everyone at this council table does, everyone in our community does, anything that we can do to make Mountain Highway safer. And I do look forward to the report coming back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mayor Little. So with this particular motion, we're effectively eliminating the option at all of ever reallocating a lane on Mountain Highway in the central segment. Is that correct?
I believe the way it's worded is that DNB Council rejects the road reallocation proposed under the MHSI central segment at this time. And so it doesn't mean in perpetuity forever. It just means for this project at this time.
I had asked the question just about if we had given any thought to bus priority lanes. Is that something that staff could speak to at all?
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, through the mayor, we'll certainly report back on that in terms of some of the options early in the new year as it relates to what options are there for transit priority, whether it's full-time, part-time. We can certainly share some options of what that might look like for consideration.
May I add to that so Translink can prioritize areas based on your congestion. We definitely want to combat congestion in the community. I don't know that this particular area is causing buses to come off their schedule because of congestion. Certainly southbound below this is, but in this central segment, I would be surprised if that was one of the prioritized routes for congestion clearance. Most of the congestion clearance areas that are being prioritized by TransLink are along the R2 corridor, where those buses are being, you can see the next bus a few ahead because they're trapped in the congestion.
I'd be interested in getting a response on that. I appreciate your comments. I found myself sitting on the 210 though and running late a number of times. So I know that's related to congestion, but I don't know how it compares to some of the other routes. So I guess my caution here is just that we're we're closing the door on one option. And I'm not saying that I support what's being presented. I think I made that clear in my comments. I don't necessarily think bike lanes are the best use of any additional space that would come out of this project. But I also think we should be looking at all options. And the data certainly supports what is being presented here tonight and reallocating that lane. So I'm hesitant to just close the door on this option altogether when it could very well be the way that we should be building transportation through this corridor for the future, which seems to be a big concern around the table here tonight, is the number of people that are moving into this area. So continuing to just do things the same and the way we've always had them, I can appreciate that that's maybe more comforting to most people, and it just might not benefit us by just completely turning that option off at this time. So that would just be my caution there.
Okay, thank you. Next, what's that from before? Councillor Hanson,
No, yeah.
Councillor Forbes, your comments, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments too about the impact with the congestion we already have. One is, if you try to get anyone a service call from Vancouver or Burnaby, they know what Mountain Highway is like. They know what the bridge is like, and they won't come. I've called up and I've had a 10-minute conversation with a fellow to come over and repair something. He says, great, what's your address? As soon as I tell him he's North Van, he said, I don't go there. So that's an impact from the congestion. And we have that now, and we've had it for years on Mountain Highway. In fact, as a comment back about, somebody mentioned they weren't sure if there was really that much backup in the middle portion that we're talking about. I can tell you, living on Kirkstone, that I can't count on both hands in a month how many times the road going south is backed all the way up to Kirkstone. And I sit from there all the way down. And anyone who's in that road from Kirkstone down, who simply wants to get to the interchange in order to get onto the highway, do the left-hand turn onto the highway, they're stuck in there with everybody else that wants to go to Brooksbank or Keith Road. So it is poor planning of that exchange, but it does back up all the way up to Kirkstone. I've seen it past Kirkstone sometimes too, but not quite as often. And also the other impact is when we put the off-ramp for Seymour, which anybody who lives in Seymour, I'm not against you using the off-ramp, but I just want to mention that made it better for the highway because it took traffic that didn't want to go on the highway from Seymour, and it allowed you to exit off onto Mountain Highway. So more people are coming to Lynn Valley Center. More people are coming that way, or snaking up and snaking through 29th. I mentioned that. I guess that's the points I wanted to make, that the congestion has been there for years, and it backs up on the southbound, which only has one lane. So the northbound doesn't back up like that. It backs up, it's steady at times, but it doesn't come to a full grinding stop like the south lane does. So all three lanes are congested now.
Okay, Council, I see no further speakers. We're just getting the motion written up on the screen, but I think if everybody has an understanding of what the intent of the motion is, I've already read the verbiage out. I don't know that we need to wait for it entirely to be written up. So I'm prepared to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. We've completed the business of the special council meeting at this time, and so I will accept adjournment. Accepted. Thank you very much.